Hey everyone, Seth at Hub City Vintage, and today I want to talk about crystals. It seems like a subject that should be pretty straightforward, but in reality, there's quite a bit of nuance and enough information out in the wild that the waters can get easily muddied when you're trying to make the best decision regarding your own watch. Most of the information I want to share today is regarding a specific crystal, but I think there will be some good general takeaways as well. And for our Patreon subscribers, I'll be sharing a short bonus segment after that I think you guys might appreciate. For many, if not most watches, when it comes to replacing the crystal, there is one or maybe two options. You can order an OEM replacement from the manufacturer or a third party if it's available, or you can opt for an aftermarket clone. So long as the size and dimensions are correct, either will likely get the job done. It's not so different with vintage watches, but chances are, in many cases, new old stock crystals are less likely to be available, or sometimes cost prohibitive when they are. But fortunately, there are large modern manufacturers who reproduce clones of vintage crystals like German Alcymon, or GS as they're more commonly known, Stern Cruise, and Castrico, and that means that no matter what vintage watch you're looking to restore or to have restored, chances are there is a crystal available that will fit. In almost every instance, that crystal will fall under three main categories: acrylic, mineral, or sapphire. You can certainly break things down further from there, as there are several types of acrylic materials, specific proprietary blends and manufacturing methods like plexiglass and hesselite. Mineral crystals cover a range as well, from basic silica-based materials to tempered and hardened branded formulas like K1 and Seiko's Hardlex. Sapphire crystals are made from synthetic corundum, which is the next hardest substance on Earth to diamond, and you can even find specialty treated sapphire watch crystals as well. Now, obviously, from a hardness standpoint, acrylic would be the easiest to scratch, registering around a 3 on the Mohs scale of hardness. Mineral glass, much harder than acrylic, and somewhat scratch resistant at between 5 and 6 on the Mohs. And sapphire is very hard to scratch, registering a 9 on the Mohs scale. For scale, diamond is the hardest element we know of and is a pure 10. As I said, for some watches, there may only be one option that works, but on occasion, there may be what can seem like too many options for one watch, and it can lead to information overload where you're left feeling overwhelmed and unsure, and I happen to have just such a watch, or rather watches, right here, and still housing their original, albeit fairly marred original crystals. For Seiko enthusiasts, several 6139 models were originally fitted with Seiko's own 330W18GN Hardlex mineral crystal. This is a NOS original Hardlex 330W18GN, almost impossible to find. And when you can find them, they are certainly today can be very expensive. People do not want to let them go. Specifically for the 60XX references, including the famed Pogue, this is the crystal that fit. As I mentioned, these are the originals here. You can see they are pretty badly marred and scratched, and certainly it's time for a replacement for both of these. As popularity of these watches has grown exponentially over the last decade or more, an entire cottage industry of replacement parts, including crystals, has developed. When I first started with vintage Seiko, I could pretty regularly source NOS crystals, and the only aftermarket crystals available for the 6139 were from Jonathan at Easttech. Rest in peace. Today, there are suppliers all over the world offering up their version of this crystal, and in all three categories. Many of our clients have their personal preference, and when sending me a watch for service, they often include the crystal they'd like installed along with their watch. Some only want NOS goods and are willing to pay and wait for the privilege. Just as many don't have a preference and ask what we suggest, and so I thought that's really at the heart of what I want to talk about today. What do we use, why, and what are the benefits and drawbacks? I think I should preface this by mentioning that watch crystals fall under the category of quote-unquote wear items. And that just means that these are parts that are naturally expected to be replaced at intermittent service intervals, not every service, but as necessary based on wear. So not having the original crystal has never been an issue for me as a buyer or a collector. I feel like I can assume that if a vintage watch that's been maintained over decades makes its way to me and the crystal looks okay, it's likely not the original, and that's okay, even expected. Before we dig into it, I'll just mention that I've gone ahead and replaced the crystals in these watches. Neither have been serviced. or cleaned or anything like that. Literally just swapped out the crystals, the worn ones that you saw before, with a pretty popular mineral replacement on the left-hand side here, and on the right, the acrylic that we typically use for this watch. Number 1, aesthetic value. To my eye, a fresh acrylic crystal is hard to beat from a visual standpoint. When properly fit, they are perfectly clear and can make it almost appear as if there is no crystal there at all. The colors of the dial and hands can appear brighter and more vivid, and this isn't just my opinion either. Light simply doesn't reflect off of acrylic as intensely as it does mineral glass. Acrylic allows 90% of light to pass through, in effect making it even more transparent than mineral glass of the same thickness. I want to see a great dial and hands personally, and don't really want to see the crystal. 2, acrylic crystals aren't as susceptible to glare in the same way that mineral glass or sapphire are. Ask anyone who's ever tried to take a picture of a watch with a mineral crystal, especially if it's curved. Finding a workable angle can seem impossible. Once again, I want to see the dial and the hands, not the glare. Number 3, acrylic crystals are pretty easy to maintain. While they might not be as durable as mineral and certainly not sapphire, an accidental scratch from a desk diving incident doesn't necessarily mean that you have to live with that groove running down the center of your crystal. A compound like Polywatch can pretty easily remove scratches and restore the finish of most acrylic crystals. Number 4, the fourth reason may have more to do with the quality and dimensions of the mineral or sapphire replacement that you're using, but as our clients often bring up this point, I wanted to address it here. If you've seen mineral replacements for this watch, especially after having an original crystal installed, you might have noticed what some refer to as distortion. If you've experienced it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about right away. I think it has less to do with the material itself and more in how most of these crystals are designed. Seiko's original version has a very sharp corner where the side bevel transitions to the top. I mean, razor sharp. Maybe this is hard to replicate in manufacturing, but a lot of the mineral replacements I've seen have a steeper bevel along with a very slightly rolled corner. And because the corner isn't as sharp as the original and very slightly curved, it in turn does some weird curving refraction at the corners when you look at the dial and the inner ring from particular angles. Some can find it a bit off-putting. We've been using the same small shop for our acrylics for this watch for years, and the beveling and corners are perfect. There is no distortion, and any refractive views have a very natural appearance and is very comparable to the original. While we certainly understand the added protection a mineral or sapphire crystal can provide, modern acrylics are pretty durable. They won't shatter, they're easy to polish, and they're quite inexpensive to replace if the worst happens. I look at these watches all day, every day, and just wanted to share my experience with what has become an increasingly recurring topic with our service clients, and just wanted to weigh in here. I hope it's been helpful to you, and if you liked it, disliked it, agree or disagree, please give us a like below and tell us your thoughts, maybe even subscribe to our channel. You can also join us over at Patreon, where $7 a month gets you access to exclusive content, comprehensive rundowns of all of our upcoming inventory, and more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.